asked, I try to be educated enough to answer them and give a perspective.
What's it like being with this young of a group? Do you feel like the advisor for a college fraternity or something like that? You know, I was just curious what that type of guys, you know, one of the youngest coaching staffs in the league.
Sure. Nothing different. You know, regardless of what the age or experience levels are, guys have earned, you know, their places here, and, you know, the head coach has a vision for everybody on the staff. It's kind of the same thing. Like we'll be in the locker room after practice talking through things, or guys will ask, you know, different things. You know, one of the things that, you know, is pretty common amongst the coaches as I've seen it is the offensive coaches will ask the defensive coaches, like, what do you guys see in there, and kind of cross-coach that, similar to the way players do it. And the more educated we can become, the better it is.
And this came up a lot during the owners' meetings when they're talking about rules with special teams and stuff like that. Like, do you get worried? It seems like there's some special teams coaches out there that get concerned about special teams being legislated out of the game. And obviously they're talking about safety being part of it, but how has that evolution been? And do you get concerned that that part of the game is not disappearing but changing dramatically?
Yeah, it's a good question. Figure out how to say this. So, first off, I don't think anybody would have a dissenting opinion that player safety is the most important thing, right? When they do things at the NFL level, generally speaking, the union has a seat at the table. The league office has a seat at the table. They'll ask the head coaches. What's been good about probably the last 7 or 8 years is when they've talked about doing things and legislating new things in the kicking game, they've included the coaches' opinions. The decisions that arrived this year are interesting. Everybody's got an opinion on how things will go. If it helps player safety, awesome. I think that there's probably a few arguments to say, yeah, this might help, but it might not. And I think that's why the league makes it a 1-year trial, see how it goes. Like when they, whatever that year that was, interference was reviewed, and it was an absolute train wreck. So we'll see how it goes. We all know where things stand right now. We're going to have to deal with it this year. There's a lot of things you got to prepare for. I've not spent as much time in past training camps talking about squib kicks, bloop kicks, how we handle those things. The fair catch comes into play situationally for sure. But I think in the preseason, we're all going to see some things we haven't seen in the past.
What's your thoughts on having the two? Sorry if you asked it, but having the two veterans at holder and kicker back, and you almost had a third, I guess, but it didn't happen with Andy. What's that like, just to have two of those three guys back?
Well, you're referring like snapper and the kicker, and obviously we're getting a new punter from the regular season last year. Familiarity is good. Those guys are proven commodities in the league. They're still playing at a high level. Aaron got injured a year ago. It's good to see him back. There's no, like, right now residual effect on, you know, anything that he's doing. You know, it is the field goal kicking part of it is a 3-part deal. Somebody got to snap it, somebody got to hold it, and then we obviously got to make the kick. So what we're really working towards is giving Matt the best opportunity by doing our job at snapper and holder. But you know, there's things to work through for sure.
Why do you think Prater's had such a long and successful career? What's it about his routine that kind of has allowed him to have such longevity?
Coaching. No, I'm kidding. You know, Matt's evolved as a kicker. Obviously, I coached him in Denver over a decade ago. You know, and he's kind of refined different things. He's found ways to experiment in the offseason on things that might help him, different points of emphasis, whether it's field goal kicking or kicking off. You know, when I first met Matt, you know, he's in his 20s, and now, you know, he's a dad, and his life's changed quite a bit. But you know, it's kind of had a calming effect on him, and you know, he's still doing it at a high level. I don't know if there's anything specific about his routine being different than anybody else, but he kind of knows what he needs and works hard doing it.
How much more special is that when you grow with a player like that and you get to connect with them on a personal level and see them evolve as a person and a player? Does it mean more when you're coaching someone like that?
I wouldn't say it means more because, you care about all your players and you try to do, the best you can for those players, whatever the work environment is, whatever things they need to be successful. That's what we do as coaches to try and do that. Brewer's the same way. I've known him for a long time. And again, just getting to know guys, but I wouldn't say it's any different when you've known a guy a long time, other than you guys just know each other well enough to sometimes communicate without communicating.
You having been there and set the record with Matt, what sort of factors do you look for in attempting another kick like that could be record set?
Yeah, it's really unique. So I've talked about this before, but in that set of circumstances, people say mile high in the thin air and all that stuff. That's amongst the coldest games I've ever been a part of. And what strikes me is two things. One, the kick. That was John Fox's. The other one is that was his first game back. He had a heart deal. And it was like, how is he on the sideline? It's so cold. So those factors kind of waved each other off. But it's the end of the half, right? So the field position component doesn't come into play. It's not like if you miss the kick, they're taking the ball over there because it's at the end. Generally speaking, you're not going to try that kick with 52 seconds left to go in the half, because if you do miss, right, that's really good field position there. So those things factor in. Seeing what he looks like, I mean, Matt's still kicking the ball a long way. I mean, he kicks off those skinnies, and they're usually moved up in front of the goalpost, but if you're watching where they're going relative to the actual goalpost, they're traveling a long way. So if he's capable of doing it and the situation comes up in the game, there's not a lot of hesitation. It just has to be right. And that's kind of what goes into the attempt. The one kick that topped that kick, it's at the end of the game, right? It's the exact same situation. So it's got to come up end of half, end of game, and we got to feel good about the conditions that we're in.
What are those interactions like? Do you ask him? Does he come to you and say, let's do it? Like, what's that back and forth like?
We usually talk in pregame, right after pregame. If it's an outdoor game and there's weather involved, we might have one or two of those this year. But, you kind of gauge with, okay, did the wind shift or, this way, that way, whatever those things are. As we're getting closer to that moment, maybe it's the 2-minute warning or whatever, it's, okay, if this comes up, where do you feel good from? And, Matt's pretty honest with those things. He obviously wants to be in that moment. He thrives in that moment, but it's just got to be right, and he'll tell us, and if we get in that range, let's do it.
With returning, whether it's kickoffs or punts, can you get a good sense of what a guy can do in practice, or do you really need to see that in game situations?
Both. I've said this before to different people. A guy can certainly eliminate himself from the job in practice, but I don't know if anybody's winning the job in practice. There's, when these college guys come out, the rules are different in college. So, like, there's rugby rollout punts. You're not going to see that at the NFL level. Okay? They don't see the ball up in the air 5 seconds, 5-3 hang time. So they've got to be able to handle that first. And then, when the lights come on, some guys can do it, some guys can't. So the ball security part is always going to be number one. Number one goal of our return team, give the ball back to the offense, and that's where we start. And then, if you average a first down, right, 10-plus yards on punt return, you're doing a good job. That's high in today's league. If you're averaging to the 35 on kickoff return, that's really high there. So that's kind of the goal, a first down mentality in our return game. And then once we get past that, that's where you're talking about explosives. But the ball security part and how good that guy is to earn a roster spot, all those things factor in.
Thanks, Coach.
Good. Thanks, guys. Yep.